It is the way they connect. A businessman insists he saw Freeman overseas. A CFA chief says Freeman slipped through emergency checkpoints by wearing real CFA credentials. And online, groups tied to the Alpine region have quietly appeared, sharing information and, according to several sources, expressing direct support for Freeman. The big question is simple: is Freeman receiving help? And if so, how deep does that support run? Welcome back to Behind the Crime Scene. If you want to stay across these massive developments, make sure you hit subscribe so you do not miss the next update. Let us start with the first major development: the community reaction. Something is happening in the Alpine region that is very different from what the rest of Australia is seeing on the news. For many locals, this situation is not black and white. People who grew up around Freeman, worked with him, or simply lived in the same communities are speaking in a way that surprises the outside world. Instead of distancing themselves, some residents of the area have expressed sympathy for him. Others have openly questioned the official version of events. Some have suggested they do not trust the information coming from the authorities. You do not get this kind of reaction by accident. You do not see this kind of loyalty unless the person being searched for has deep personal and cultural roots in the region. And Freeman does. He has spent years in the Alpine bush. He has worked there. He has volunteered there. He has built relationships across remote communities where people trust their neighbors more than they trust outsiders. This brings us to the first major update: the claim that Freeman was seen in South Africa. A man calling himself Stuart, who holds a high-level job in the AFL, came forward claiming he saw someone who he believes with 99% certainty was Freeman in Cape Town. When the story first appeared in the news, it seemed like an outlier. But Stuart insists it is real. He says authorities are not doing enough to verify his claim, and he believes investigators should review CCTV in the areas he visited. Now here is where things get complicated. Stuart traveled overseas on holiday, which means people in his workplace know he was gone. The media reported he did not want his real name used, but his position in the AFL was disclosed. That tells us something. He is not trying to hide the fact that he was in South Africa, but he is also not offering any photographic proof. In an era when nearly every person carries a smartphone with a camera, it is unusual for someone to claim such a major sighting without any photo or video to back it up. This contradiction has opened the door to speculation. Did he truly see Freeman? Did he mistake someone else? Or is this story being used to redirect public attention? The idea of Freeman fleeing the country is dramatic. It creates headlines. It shifts the focus away from the Alpine bush and toward airports and border checks. The timing of this claim and the way it spread has led many to question whether this was simply an unverified sighting or something more strategic. Now let us move into the second major update, which paints a very different picture of Freeman. A picture of someone who knows how emergency systems work from the inside. According to CFA worker Trevor McKibben, during the Black Weekend fires of 2020, Freeman was discovered deep inside a pine plantation that was actively burning. What McKibben described is not casual wandering. Freeman was wearing real CFA uniform and carrying real CFA credentials. This was not stolen equipment. This was official gear issued to him because he was doing CFA work. When crews found him, he was taking photographs of the fire. This matters for several reasons. First, during major bushfires, emergency zones are locked down tightly. Police and fire authorities set up strict checkpoints. Residents are regularly denied access, even if their homes are just meters away from the perimeter. For Freeman to get through those checkpoints, he had to be wearing the right uniform, carrying the right identification, and moving confidently enough to avoid suspicion. Second, this incident shows that Freeman already had experience navigating through high-security emergency environments years before the manhunt began. He understood the structure. He understood the roles. He knew how first responders move, how checkpoints are positioned, and how emergency crews communicate. Third, it proved something the public did not hear much about. Freeman was heavily involved in the Alpine region long before the current situation. He participated during emergencies. He spent time on the mountains, in the bush, and in areas that most people only see during evacuations or controlled burns. His connection to the environment was not recreational, it was practical. Another detail from McKibben's account is that Freeman was taking photographs inside the fire zone. There have been multiple references to Freeman being deeply interested in photography, always carrying a camera or a GoPro, and documenting the wilderness whenever he could. This means he has spent countless hours exploring the exact landscape authorities are searching now. It also means he understands vantage points, visibility, light, shadow, and angles better than the average person. Those skills matter in the bush. Now we move to the third major development, the rise of anonymous Alpine groups online. Across several social media platforms, locked and invitation-only communities have begun discussing the Freeman case. These groups are not public, and their membership appears to be made up of people connected to the Alpine region. Posts circulating outside these groups suggest some members share information, question the official narrative, and in some cases express sympathy or support for Freeman. Because these groups are private, it is impossible to verify what actually happens inside them. What we do know is based on posts that have been shared publicly by people claiming to have seen or interacted with these communities. Some describe them as rumor hubs. Others claim they exist to coordinate information about the search. A few claim, without verification, that certain members want to help Freeman. Nothing about these groups proves that anyone is directly assisting him, but their existence highlights a growing culture of local discussions, speculation, and distrust toward official information. It also reinforces the idea that Freeman's connection to the Alpine region runs deeper than many people knew, and that his story has become a focal point of online secrecy and community identity. What is clear is that these groups reflect the atmosphere surrounding the case, guarded, divided, and fueled by uncertainty. This raises a major question. Can a fugitive stay hidden for weeks or months without support? The answer historically is no. People need food, people need information, people need rest, people need supplies. If Freeman is still in the Alpine region, it is hard to imagine he is surviving entirely on his own. Knowledge of the land helps, but long-term survival usually requires outside assistance. This leads to the most compelling theory emerging from the combination of these three updates. What if the South Africa sighting is not the real story? What if the real story is the Alpine region itself? The uniforms, the credentials, the photography, the knowledge of the land, the community support, the anonymous groups, the distrust of authorities. All of this keeps pointing back to the mountains. Think about the logistics. If you were Freeman, where would you go? A foreign country, where you would be surrounded by people who do not know you, in a place where surveillance is widespread and every unfamiliar face stands out. Or the Alpine region, where you grew up, worked, volunteered, took photos, and built relationships. Every practical clue says the Alpine mountains remain the most likely location. There is also the financial aspect of the search. Hundreds of millions of dollars have already been poured into this operation. Helicopters, drones, police units, specialist teams, ground searches, fuel, logistics, equipment, accommodation, shift coverage. At this level of spending, even weak leads are followed simply because authorities cannot risk ignoring them. But a single false rumor can shift attention away from the real location. That is why the timing of these updates matters. When a large-scale manhunt is underway, misinformation spreads fast. And the more confusion there is, the harder it becomes to separate truth from noise. Yet amidst all this chaos, one thing remains consistent. The strongest narrative, the clearest evidence, and the most logical scenarios all point back to one area: the Alpine region. This brings the update to its conclusion, but this case is far from over. The next stages of the story will depend on how authorities interpret these signals, how the community continues to respond, and whether more information surfaces from social media groups, eyewitness accounts, or individuals inside the region. If you want to stay updated on every new detail as it breaks, make sure you subscribe to Behind the Crime Scene. There is more coming, and you will not want to miss it. Thank you for watching.